Welcome to the next episode of Building an Effective Productivity System. We're now starting to think about the P of the COPE system, the C being collect, the O being organize, and the P being plan. So collect, organize, plan, execute. We're now thinking about planning. And we're going to start right at the very high level, the basics. We're going to think about our values. We're going to think about our vision. You see, over the years, I've given a lot of thought to intentionality, to effective use of time and resources, to productivity, to goals, and to projects. I've given thought to planning and executing on those plans, and I believe that in order to be effective, these things are critical. But sitting over the top of our goals and sitting over the top of our projects and even our areas of focus is our vision and our values. Future episodes will think about goals, projects, areas of focus, but today we're thinking about vision and values. By vision, I mean our own personal mission statement. Now, to be honest, that sounds a bit too grand for an individual person having a mission statement, but what I mean is, what is it that we're hoping to do in the short time that we are living on this earth? Having some kind of idea on this is, I believe, an essential part of living an effective life. Therefore, I think we do need to give some time, some thought and focus to working out what is our personal vision, what are our values. Now, what do I mean by an effective life? Now, let me be clear here on what I don't mean. I don't mean that you need to be, like Elon Musk and have a life that, whatever else we may think about him and what's going on at Twitter, having a life that seems to be changing the world in some big, flashy, dramatic way. I don't mean that you need to be somebody who's always on the go, all guns blazing in pursuit of some grandiose dream. I don't mean that you need to be somebody who's making that sort of mythical 10k a month online business. However, too often, I think this is something that we don't really think about. I'm reminded of that film Office Space. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a great movie, cracking film. The main character is a guy called Peter Gibbons. His life is to go to his office each day and to do the bare minimum that he needs to do to not get fired. Outside of this, he seems to spend his time at Chachi's and then watching kung fu movies. When he's asked the question of what would he do all day if he didn't need to go to work, his answer, he would do nothing. He would sit around all day and he would do nothing. You see, the picture is of a person who is drifting through life, following the path of least resistance, with no thought or idea or care or consideration for what they want to achieve. I believe being effective means being focused on what's truly important. Being effective means using the time, the resources that we have with wisdom, with godliness, and in a proactive and intentional way. As I've said before, this doesn't just relate to our work, but to the whole of our life. Therefore, our vision, our values, should not simply relate to our work. In essence, it just means having a clear idea of what's important and allowing that to set the tone and the agenda of your days, your weeks, your months, your years, rather than merely reacting to the ebbs and flows of our feelings and our desires. So what are your values? Before we can even think about considering a vision, we need to work out what our values are, what's important to us, what matters. This is a list that's going to be different for every single person, as we're all different people. To give you an idea, I'll give you some examples from my list. But before that, I want to respond to something that I've often thought about. You see, I'm a Christian, and therefore I react a bit to the phrase or phrases like deciding what is important to me. But that doesn't negate the point that I'm making here. You see, we've all been made differently. And one of the things the Bible says is that we all have different gifts. For some people, that particular gifting will mean that being incredibly organised is a value that they have. For others, made very differently, that's not going to matter to them. You see, within that realm of living under the sovereign rule of God, there's plenty of scope for us to serve and desire to serve in a multitude of different ways. So here are some of the values that I've listed for myself when I've thought about this. Reading the Bible every day, meditating on the gospel, having that gospel at the centre of my family, helping to ensure that the gospel is preached, that God's people are discipled, developing a deep, consistent, fruitful prayer life, reading and learning, reading deeply, reading widely, owning books, being thorough in my work, using equipment that works well, and not running things into the ground to the point that they become much less reliable, and then continuing to challenge myself day by day, week by week. Those are some of my values. So then we come on to why have a vision? Well, the reason is to apply to the whole of our life the principle that drives us in planning our days and our weeks. The point is that you cannot do everything. You see that phrase? I don't know if you've heard it. If you aim at nothing, then you'll very likely hit nothing. But it's also true that if you aim at everything, you'll probably hit nothing as well. You see, having a plan for our day, having a plan for our week, allows us to focus on the things that we intentionally and proactively set out to achieve. Having a vision on a much grander scale enables us to be much more focused on that grander scale. And it's going to guide us in our daily planning, our weekly planning, our monthly, and especially our yearly planning. I don't advocate that you be absolutely relentless in your pursuit of that singular vision to the exclusion of everything else. So that brings us to the question of, well, how exactly do you decide your vision? Well, having considered our values and what's important to us, we can turn ourselves to consider what it is we're going to strive to do with our lives whilst we have time on earth. For me, I've set myself an overarching vision that I then cash out into 4 different areas of life. In my family, in my ministry, in my work, and then for me personally. Your vision comes out of your values and needs to be consistent with them. If it's not, the reality is that it's likely something that you just don't care about that much. For example, one of my key values is that having good, solid, deep theology is critical to living a godly Christian life. Therefore, one aspect of my vision is to help as many Christians as possible develop a deep theological mind. Implementing that doesn't mean that I'm going to be setting up seminaries and writing books. It might look like that for some, depending on many other factors. For others, it may look like seeking to do that in their own family and in their friendships within their local church. In considering your vision, don't be afraid to think big. Most people overestimate what can be achieved in a year, but they underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And also, remember, this is something that you're going to refine over time, likely making it much more specific as you go. So that's how you define what your vision is. But once you've done that, how do you go about implementing it? Well, the component parts of implementing this are all of the things that I've talked about on my blog and on my podcast before, and they're things that I'm going to be talking about in upcoming videos. You implement your vision by setting goals, deciding projects, building habits and routines, and doing that to achieve those goals, and then taking action on the smaller tasks and the smaller habits of everyday life that slowly chip away at that larger goal. Let me give you 2 examples of this from me. One part of my vision, as I said before, is to help as many people be more effective in their use of time and resources. To that end, and to do this, I've set up some routines and habits to try and write blog posts, to produce podcasts, and these YouTube videos every week or every fortnight. Not every single post, podcast, or video that I make is going to hit that aim. Some of them will be better than others. But every post I produce, every video that I make is serving that goal, as in addition to the possibility that some people might be helped directly by the content that I produce, it's also enabling me to learn, to grow, and to get better, that I might help more people in the future. Another part of my vision, as I said, is to help Christians develop theological mind. So reading the Bible myself, reading theology books are going to be key parts of that. The point is that I have goals, which we'll think about on the next video, projects the one after that, and then habits, routines and tasks and things that fit in with and serve the overall vision. But I want to say humility is key here. Whilst we can have plans, we can have ideas, and we can have a vision for our life, we need to always remember, it's a principle that's explained in a part of the Bible in Proverbs 16 verse 9. It says, "The heart of a man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps." The point is that we all know life doesn't submit to our plans. So humility is key here. Being reflective is key as well. As life changes, our priorities and our values will need to change with it. Sometimes that is going to mean tweaking our vision, making it clearer and more specific. Sometimes it might mean moving away from certain things that we'd set about achieving because they no longer fit with the course our life is taking. That's fine. That's not a failure. That's just accepting that we can't control every aspect of our lives and we need to change. The last thing I want to say is it takes a certain kind of person to be utterly relentless in the pursuit of a singular goal and a singular vision. Most of us are not that person. And so trying to be that is going to be massively detrimental to us, to our health, and to everybody around us. So it is okay to have a goal that doesn't serve your particular vision. It's okay to have a project or a habit or a routine, or to take time out to do things that don't serve that particular vision. I have a goal to one day finally complete Skyrim, which is a game on my Xbox, and to complete every single game in the Final Fantasy series. Now, those goals serve little to no purpose, but I love those games. Some goals, they may not directly serve anything. They may not directly serve your vision, but they might indirectly serve it as well. So, for example, health and fitness often falls into this category. You see, this is the thing. You don't need to be relentless. You don't need to change the world. But proactive intentionality over the course of your life will prevent us from being that drifter who doesn't really use the gifts, doesn't really use the abilities, doesn't really use the resources that we've been given, and doesn't really do anything with them. And that is why I think spending time to figure out what your values are and what your vision is, and then being reflective to tweak that over time, is a really important and really helpful starting point as we think about this third area of living an effective life, which is planning. Planning our values, planning our vision, and then from that, next time, planning our goals. Thank you very much for watching. If you like this video, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to the channel. There is much more to come in this series and also in my UpNotes series. There's a couple of other videos showing up on the screen now, so please do check those out as well. And we'll see you next time on this series where we'll think about planning our goals.